See, I'm the technical Asian here.
Your Geek Squad?
Yeah, Geek Squad. All right. Let me get situated somehow. Okay. All right, hey everybody, it's Seibo with Vape Exhale and Brandon Scott Shen with another episode of Happy Asian Males. Maybe Happy Asian Men today because, as you notice, we have a third guest today, one of my mentors, Al Gerona, who I like to consider the original Happy Asian Male. How's it going, Al?
Yo guys, happy Friday, happy Memorial Day weekend.
Uh-oh. You are the Filipinos are just natural showmen, huh?
You know what? It's in the blood.
He was like,
It
no, I don't
flows.
know if I could. All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so real quick, the reason Al's even on today's show is it's a pretty interesting story in that, well, the sad part is one of his friends has cancer, and he called me to talk about why cannabinoids could help and, you know, what other advice I could give him. So he ended up coming by my house. We were talking, and Brandon stopped by so that we could start doing our podcast, and we were talking about just growing up as Asian men, and he was telling this story about, you know, whether we're first generation, second generation, what that means, and, you know, it started getting into, like, just, you know, one of his cousins who's just 1 year older who has an accent and how much differently she gets treated, and, you know, I thought, well, why tell me this story off camera when this is exactly what we were going to talk about today, which is, you know, depression in the Asian American community, why it's very, you know, seldom talked about, and what leads to this type of depression. So, you know, I think one of the things that we were talking about was like the dual identity.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, how old you were when you came to America, and, you know, a little bit about that story you were telling me about your cousin.
Now, you got it, Seibo. So it's my pleasure just being here. I mean, you and I have known each other, a baker's dozen, which is 13 years.
Yep.
Yeah, literally to this day. So I came to the United States when I was 7, and so I knew how to speak English by the time I was 3 years old. And one of the things I noticed kind of growing up is other Filipinos that came here later on, meaning high school and beyond, would actually make a comment and say, how come you don't have an accent? And I didn't know how to comment to that. Like, what does that mean? I'm growing up in the United States, I'm speaking English like you are. They'd be like, no, something's wrong with you.
Was that a positive way or a negative?
No. Oh, it was definitely negative, and I never realized it was really downright negative until I was really in high school. So the kids would often tell me, you know what, you're kind of like a coconut. And I'm like, I like coconut, it's good for you.
so brown on the outside and
white on the inside. And so they began to tell me, because I don't have an accent, I was not real Filipino.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but wait a minute, I was born in the Philippines, grew up in the Philippines, I still eat with, you know, a spoon and a fork and eat rice 3 meals a day. I'm as Filipino as you are. They're like, no, you don't have an accent. But yet the other side of the coin, guys, is I have friends that grew up much like me that came here when they were 2, 3, 4 years old that get treated the same way by the other side of the Filipino culture, where we get reverse discrimination. And so those Filipinos that are giving us that discrimination actually feel disenfranchised. And then that whole form of depression, right, it's a social depression. So they get treated differently by other Filipinos.
Interesting.
Because they have an accent. And a perfect example is my cousin who came here a few years after me. And she has 2 master's degrees. She's a professor over in Michigan. So she brought me over several times, walking around the campus. And one thing I noticed is I held court just because I was speaking, and I'm not saying she's not articulate, but she distinctly had that heavier accent, or an accent. So she was completely discriminated upon without using the word discrimination. And I know to this day, right, you know, I'm in my late 40s, she is downright, you know, without overusing the word depressed, it's something that she can't live with. It's this weird shame in the United States.
Does she realize that, or?
Oh, she realizes it, and it's a socioeconomic stigma, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about, you know, depression, I mean, she suffers from that, and it's this shame, right? She feels ashamed that she has an accent, and then it falls into this whole notion that she's a second-class citizen, where she's really not.
Right.
I mean, she has 2 more master's degrees than I do, right?
Yeah.
It's really odd, and I don't know if any of you guys actually have witnessed that, because you're basically born here. Is that correct, Brandon?
Yeah.
And then, do you have friends and relatives that are Asian
Yeah.
that were not born here that have an accent?
Yeah. What happened? It's man. I was just thinking about how what if you say you speak Chinese and you come to America and you don't speak English, you're gonna try to associate with people who do speak Chinese first. But it has to become this conscious decision, or maybe with the help of your family, to begin to speak English. But even then, it could be like with an accent.
Yeah.
And people, like, they make fun of it in Hollywood. It's quite obvious when you're doing like the Jing Chang Chong accent. You know what I mean? Like it. But then, I used to think that I didn't think anything of it till in the past couple of years that I don't have a Chinese accent. But for my friends who did speak Chinese, they're like, well, why don't you speak? And I'm like, I didn't grow up with that. But I think my family figured out it was an advantage to just speak English to us early on because of the country that we lived in.
Yeah.
But the flip side is that I feel like I'm not as close to my Chinese roots as I could be.
Yeah.
So that has been a part of my journey that I'm coming towards now, is accepting that part of it too.
Yeah. And I'm glad you bring that up, because I feel as if when I'm around Filipino relatives or parties or just events, when we were at a fundraiser and lots of Filipinos, there was a dividing line of those born in the United States, those born not in the United States, and those with thick accents, right? My perception of thick accents. And there's definitely a dividing line, and we should be connected as people coming from the same country rather than being divided. So is that something that's coming from society in general? Is that a Filipino thing? Is that an American thing? And what drives that? Because that behavior drives us to separate from one another and not be more connected, where we should be, because we come from the same land.
Right.
We speak the same languages and dialects. We eat the same foods, right? We believe in the same God. And it's a weird phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, I think all of it is like some sort of weird power struggle where if you feel powerless against the white man, then you just start delineating within your own group. And obviously there's, within Asian culture or Chinese culture, it's very similar to Filipino culture, where the darker skinned individuals are the, peasants or the field workers, and those with lighter skin. And, I think internal discrimination and racism is just as bad as like between other races. And I think one of the things that was interesting was, if you're not at home here and you're not at home in your motherland, then being called a coconut, did that make you feel bad? Or
you know what, when I first heard it, I didn't know what to make of it, right? It was brand new to me. Then going to high school here in the city, in San Francisco, I went to Lowell, and it's generally thought of as a very good school, but there are also dividing lines there. But when I started getting called that, or being called a banana, right? It was completely derogatory. And being called that by your own Filipino brethren was actually quite hurtful.
Yeah.
I mean, and it caused me to think that I was not Filipino, and I started questioning, wow, what did I do?
You start to deny those parts. You're like, or you are selective about who you let know.
Yeah. And then being excluded from some things, right? The Philam Club, I'm obviously Filipino, but I would never get invited to certain events because of the perception that I was not Filipino because I did not have an accent, which is the most ridiculous thing.
When I was in my 20s, I was definitely one of those guys that probably would have shut you out, because I can't speak my native tongue.
No way, you?
Well, yeah, I was a much different person in my 20s than I am now, So I would see like another Asian person, and if I perceived him to be whitewashed, I'd be like, that guy's a banana. But, the ironic thing is, I had no knowledge of Taiwanese history or Chinese history. I was just like pointing other people out. And to me, that's like a really kind of ugly characteristic of like, pulling someone down to make yourself feel better, right? And I think, I don't have any personal like experience with long bouts of depression, but I do feel that like when you are bringing someone down in order to make yourself feel better, there's underlying reasons for like, why you're doing those things subconsciously, right? Like I was probably very, not vindictive, but, very critical of these, whitewashed Asians because, I wanted that white girlfriend, and I was like, well, these, probably just, all sorts of like conflicting things within me as a kid as I'm trying to figure out, what motivates me and why I'm thinking the way I am. So, well, did you fight back to these people, or what was your response?
No, so, I think that fighting back with your own culture is actually taking 3 steps backwards, right? It's just learning to understand why they believe the way they believe. Is that something inherent within Filipinos, number one, or is that inherent as a white culture pressed down upon Asians in general and in Filipinos? So what I started beginning to understand, beyond high school, is the fact that it's actually a phenomenon here in the United States. It's bringing down people of color and separating us, right?
Yeah.
So the
Into
more
districts.
Oh yeah, when you divide a culture, you weaken it, right? And so, and again, this is not about socioeconomics, but when socioeconomics and psychology are affected, the people are brought down, and that to me, really, guys, when depression sets in, you depress people socioeconomically, you depress them through lack of education, right?
Yeah.
And that's what depression really is, right? You really connect their mind to their spirit, and you bring that down, and then you oppress people. So I didn't fight back. I wanted to understand where that was coming from, and so everything's built on relational equity, 1-to-1, day by day, and then group to group, peer to peer, and then outside of the peer. And so by the time I was in college doing undergrad, I started to begin to understand that those Filipinos coming in were actually discriminated upon by typically the white people, right? I don't want to say white people, but America in general.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn,
the people in power, or the majority.
Correct. And they started doing that to other Filipinos that they perceived were different because they were pressed down upon. Yeah. So I think, the biggest encouragement for us
Shit
as
rolls
males,
downhill, right?
Yeah. is we ought to be able to first seek to understand
the why.
And the why, right? What motivates people. But then it's the whole notion of not fighting anybody. But about understanding and bringing in and having those straight dialogues. And you're right, Seibo. When I was in my 20s, it was probably a lot harder for me to dialogue with intelligent people, right? Just because I was over-opinionated. Being opinionated is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but understanding other people's opinion and not being offended or hurt by it, but then how that actually comes into play in your everyday life and how you could use those opinions to actually help advance other groups of people beyond your own. So I think, we've made a lot of strides, at least in my life, in the last 25 years, in actually seeking out knowledge, seeking out truth, right? Every single day we're alive, right? We have an opportunity to be better as men, better as Asians, better as culture. I mean, do you guys agree?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's crazy about
That's
this?
pretty deep, man.
So I've known Al for 12 years or so, and we were both sales guys at these technology companies, so a lot of our discussion revolved around sales. And I know that you've also mentored a lot of people, but kind of hearing this come out of you, not that it's shocking, but this is like a completely different side than I'm used to, because our businesses have pretty much been like, business context, and then just, whatever guys goof around and, do. So, man, I'm kind of blown away. And this is also kind of why, like, I think doing these things are so important. And, and what I really love about this is it's just real. Like, we literally just sat down, turned on these lights, and then said this was a topic we we're going to talk about. And then, even if no one else learns anything from this, I got to learn about Al's philosophy, or not his entire philosophy, but just some thoughts about this that I think are, really useful for some people to hear, to help them, get through this period as they're growing up.
And have you heard of an author named Brene Brown?
No.
So she's quite famous in like the TED Talk world because of a discussion. She's a shame researcher. That's her topic, and she talks about the number one battling or thing to battle shame is talking about it. Because when you just keep it yourself, it festers and it becomes this thing where you're like, I'm alone. But when you utter it and someone's like, hey, me too, it loses its weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because, like you were saying, if people are divided and they're not talking about something,
Correct.
they're going to hold all of that shame as a load and be like, oh my God, I'm the only person who has this funny accent. Like, I always thought, I was like, man, I'm the only guy who doesn't know about his Asian culture and he, like, doesn't know, like, how to, you know, like, interact with both sides, like, of American and Asian culture. And it turns out there's a ton of people.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, like, and it was because we had a conversation. But
Yeah.
I think that's higher level thinking, and I think the world we live in puts a lot of people into that reptilian fight or flight brain where you're not actually making conscious decisions. Like, they're always in a rush. And I think that's on purpose because that's the way our socioeconomic structure is designed, is to take advantage of people, to manipulate them.
Yeah.
They're not having them say, hey, you know, this person's similar to me. Why can't we team up and help our efforts together? That takes conscious effort and thought, though. That takes real effort.
Sure it does.
And we're appealing to people on a level like, don't put any effort in. Do the easiest thing. Save money. Just pay for it.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, it's what you call safe, right? We all know that. I mean, we're Asians. We're taught to be safe, which means go to school, get the best grades possible, get as much education as we could stand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Asian way.
Yeah.
Right? It's mom and dad's way is the highway. But what's interesting, Brandon, you talked about shaming, right? And this is something we can relate to. Asian people as a culture, we don't talk about certain things. We don't want to put family shame.
Yep.
We don't talk about depression.
save face, man.
Save face.
Yeah.
We don't talk about certain diseases or homosexuality.
People dying. They're like,
no. No. But see, once everything is brought back, into the light, I'm a firm believer in this, right? Then there's no shame. So if we're able to talk about the tougher conversations, tougher topics immediately brought to the light, there's no darkness. So I really believe the world wants darkness, right? They want shame. No, but we want, as a people, I really believe, bring light into topics.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So, I mean, we're not alone, right?
Mm-mm.
I mean, we're not alone in anything. So that's, I think, the way the man or society or white America has oppressed the Asian man is make him feel alone, isolated. Oh, he's just a brainiac. Oh, he can't be an athlete. He can only be this. No.
Yeah.
We could be this plus this plus this plus that.
Whole.
And whole.
Multifaceted. Yeah.
Absolutely. Multifaceted. But also, I think that, this whole notion that Asians fall into one bucket it's completely erroneous. We fall into many buckets, right?
I believed it too. I used to think every single Asian person was smart, honest, and logical.
Does math.
So any Asian person I met, I'm like, well, I would listen to them and believe them because I thought we were all smart and logical, Then I realized, oh, there's plenty of dumbass Asians out there. Like, I can't listen to all Asians. Like,
Well, when did it? Well, how long did it take you to actually consciously realize that and subconsciously realize that? I mean, when was that point you finally said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is a bunch of shit that I've been taught all my life"?
Yeah.
And then when did you say, no?
Okay, so my sister was an Asian American Studies major, and she's 4 years older than me. So, I was hearing kind of like this, like, Asian political, like, talk, like, probably as a 14-year-old, right?
Oh, so you got wind of it pretty early.
Yeah, but, it's like, when you're young and you don't have life experience, you could hear something, and you could understand it, and you could say it back to someone, but
there's no context.
you don't really, like,
yeah.
It's like if you've never had an orgasm, you know it feels good because everyone says it, but you don't know exactly how it feels like, right? So I would
That's
say,
a good way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, I would say it's something like that. It probably took till maybe late 20s or early 30s where I really started understanding, like, oh wait, like, white people accept me, but there's some, like, stuff that they're programmed to really think about me that may affect my ability to, climb the corporate ladder or, You know, so I started understanding like, all right, well, this is how I need to play the game so that I could be a part of like the in crowd, you know. And San Francisco is a place where I think if it happens, it's like at a very, very low level, you know, where it's not explicit at all. But, you know, once you're kind of tuned in and you start seeing these things, then you could recognize like when those things are happening. And I can't think of like a really good example off the top of my head, but I think the fact that, I mean, more recently, I don't know if we talked about this, but I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of other CEOs and someone takes out the trash and someone makes a remark that, yeah, the Mexican guy is supposed to take out the trash. And then they turn and then they look at me and they go, whoa, sorry, Seibo, you know? And I was like, come on, guys.
Like you're the racial judge, like, hey, hold on.
No, I think, you know, like I've kind of, well, you know, I speak well, so I believe like I've assimilated as like a white person so much that like they just kind of forget that I am a person of color, you know? So I'm like, holy shit, you know? Like, what the fuck do they say when I leave the room, you know?
Yeah.
Wontons and dumplings? I don't know. You know, probably not. These are all, I mean, I don't think it was malicious, but it was
No,
still
but
shit
they had
that
an
say.
oops moment. They're like, holy moly, yikes! Like, check thyself, right?
Yep.
And by the way, you know, for those watching this, so I've known you since your 20s, 30s, and I'm moving to your 40s.
Yep.
And I tease him all the time. I said, hey man, could I rub up against you? Because he's got the metabolism, I swear, of like a sexy pole dancer, which means that he never
That's
gets
actually what he does a lot of times when he's on his headset talking to people. He's just spinning on a pole. He's got to get it in somehow because he's super busy.
Yeah.
He never gains weight. I want your metabolism, but the point I was going to make is, so he met his wife in his 20s, right? I mean, at the dog park, and I vividly remember that day because he told everyone in the office, like, oh, I met this girl, she's got this beagle, blah, blah, blah. And knowing him now, and it's not about evolving, it's about maturing and growing, right? And expanding his boundaries and territories. I'm just so proud of you, and then just honored to know you as friend.
Thank you.
And here we are, right? I mean, you're in your 40s. I'm in my late 40s.
I just turned 40, by the way, not 40s.
Well, come on. I'm just trying to make myself feel young.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing. Like, we have these kinds of deeper conversations, right? I mean, over the decades. And, I mean, we had so much fun in our startup life, you know. I mean, I know you didn't drink. I drank a lot. You know, we just had a great time. Dogs involved. And then meeting Brandon here today, I'm just like, man, he's a good-looking dude with that goat. I mean, you know, I get hair envy. I cannot grow facial hair. That's why I'm like looking at you and just like, dang.
Can I tell you a secret?
What?
I wasn't able to grow this before I started lifting weights.
I lift weights. What do I have to do?
I mean, like, I won't go into details, but like,
Steroids?
no. I don't even know where to get steroids. I mean, like, hey, do you have a steroid guy?
Really?
Like,
Teaching Olympic weightlifting, I would just imagine, like, you just know, like, all right, well...
you think, right? But
Yeah.
it's such a weird topic when people talk about steroids, but no one actually, like, I've never heard anyone ask for them.
Interesting. Because, like, at a dispensary, I know if I'm like, does someone know where to get shrooms? There's at least a couple people
In the
there.
room right then and there, like,
oh, yeah.
So I assumed at a gym, you're like, oh, roids? Well, shit.
I forget that
Talk
that
to Vince
exists
and Jim.
sometimes. But
So you guys both have these little goats, man. You know, this little fuzz of hair, you know how long that would take me? Probably about 4 months. And I have all this hair. It's all full, but I can't grow
So
hair.
do you think, like, okay, this isn't a joke, but not growing, not having as, like, thick facial hair, do you think that, like, affects, like, because one of our things, like, my hypothesis is why no Asian males, like, want to come on this show is that when they were young, the stereotype was, you got the smallest dick in this room. So that has somehow shut off, like, this level of confidence that they can't achieve because deep down they know they have the smallest dick in the room.
Yeah, well, I know I don't have the small second room.
I do.
That's not true.
No, I know.
As a matter of fact, real quick, like, all the cups that I buy, and I definitely don't have a big dick, but they barely fit in these cups. I'm like, are my nuts super big, or is just people's dicks not that big?
Well, it's a muscle, right? You exercise it all the time, right? So it's pumped up. But so, you know, it's interesting. You talk about, you know, the whole confidence thing. So I grew up in the Philippines with many female cousins. I was the anointed one. So I was the the first male boy from the eldest male of a family.
So Simba.
Oh, I was Simba, right?
Oh, is that what
Rawr!
it means?
Yeah, I was just the firstborn. I was the
So the
chosen
firstborn
one.
of the oldest, which means you carry on
Oh yeah.
everything.
I see.
And so I had cousins around me, and then I noticed that they were treated differently because I was the male. I was going to carry on the name, and man, I used to, have a lot of fun with my girl cousins. I would trip them up. They would, give them concussions. Like scrape their knees in it. My grandmother would just say, "Oh, don't worry, don't worry." And then I would get to eat first. I would get to eat before my uncles.
What?
And yeah. And
That's
so that
crazy.
Before uncles too.
before my uncles, I was like, kind of this little
Yeah.
chief, and I was this fat roly-poly. So the point of that in terms of confidence is because I was made to feel like, hey, you walk on water, and I acted like it, right? So when I was growing up, even though I was kind of fat, I was saying, you know what? You messing around with the, Chief Kamehameha here? Like, and
Nice.
so I had this attitude that you can't screw with me. So I was fortunate in that way. But when I came to the United States, I was made to feel a little bit differently because I was going to a Catholic school and everyone was white, right? It's either you're Italian or you're Irish, and I was going to a Catholic school. So I was Catholic, but I didn't fit in that bucket.
Yeah, it's
So
so
they're like-
interesting how Catholicism has affected different ethnicities.
Oh, big time. And
Catholic school is like the center of so many bad stories and bad jokes, and a lot of shameful stories actually.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's another episode, guys, where we could talk about that. I mean, that's we're getting back to depression and the whole shaming, aspect, but there's a shame in that too, right? Growing up Catholic as a Filipino, because there were a lot of sins of those priests, a lot of stuff in San Francisco, and so then, I witnessed some of them. I was part of the biggest lawsuits growing up against the Catholic Church, and I was like really ashamed to just kind of be Catholic and be associated with that. And worst of all, I'm like, oh, he's Filipino Catholic. He was part of that church. So I had to kind of live through that. But again, you just put it into the light. And I began to talk about this is what happened. It happened to me. It happened to my friends. But that could have really weighed me down growing up, as an adolescent and thinking, oh, I should be living in shame or should be hiding. No. It happened. It happened to people. I'm sorry it did. We go through that. People have to pay the consequences for it. And, I still feel bad for some of the kids to this day that unfortunately haven't survived the shame of that and the depression and constantly being in and out of jail and committing a lot of crimes because they have no direction in life, right? Because literally their life was obliterated by that shame.
Yeah.
So it goes back to our topic at hand of depression.
So do you think because you had like that upbringing that made you more confident, you were able to move past this, or how did you move past that?
Well, I was able to. I think you know me well enough that I could discuss just about anything.
Discuss just about anything.
And bring it to light. And so, for me, right, I'm such an imperfect person. We all are. We're imperfect. But if you know you're imperfect and you're improving on things on a daily basis, it's completely okay. And so how I got through that part of my life, Seibo, is I began to talk about it. I began to talk about it with my mom, my dad, my sisters, and people that wanted to listen. Because the stigma was no longer on me, right? If you keep it in, it's here. You're bundling it in, it's stress, disease. But if you put it out, right, some people will receive it, some people reject it. I don't care. I put it out there, it's a truth, it's part of my life, part of my experience. And the more you exercise that, you're freeing up, right? All the channels are just flowing. And it took a while to really get there. I think that by the time you and I met, I was completely free. I was completely freed of that. Because we become, I think, imprisoned or we're shackled by the things of our past, where our past should propel us to the future.
Yeah. No, one of the things that was interesting when I first met you was like, I was pretty popular. I had a lot of Asian friends, but I saw like how well you kind of like seemed to like blend in with like all the rest of the people in the company, and I was like, I would have fun hanging out with like Rajan or PC or, but then it was just kind of interesting to watch you kind of like so seamlessly, like kind of blend in with the folks. And I mean, do you think like, I mean, I just always think like, why did I have a blockage at that point and you were like free to just interact, and I mean now I know the reason because I could in retrospect kind of look back, but I mean, did you work on assimilating proactively or?
Yeah, I think it's it's consciousness, right? It's you talked about it. You train people as a profession, right? And you look at for lack of a better word, you were saying earlier, you look at people's butts, right?
I make butts big.
Yeah, right. So you're a trainer, but see, you're conscious of what you do, so you're a professional at it. I think we should be professionals as life givers. So it's either you're life giving or you're life taking, right? There's no middle ground. So what I started kind of noticing earlier on is everything is built on relational equity, right? So obviously, he and I have known each other quite a while. We've known each other a couple of hours. I have more relational equity with you, right? So I know him deeper. We've gone through war together, battles, right? A lot of disagreements, especially with with young, Mr. Columbia. That's another whole episode. That's a deep episode.
That's like
we could have
10
him in here.
Episodes.
Yeah, we could have him here. Well, I'll get him here. But to really answer your question,
Ninja reflexes.
But so
all good.
So I'll use this as kind of analogy. So you guys asked me, hey, you want to be in this podcast? And so I was thinking, well, the truth of the matter is I was like totally hungry. I need to get a smoothie. I'm a vegan. So I'm like, oh man, I got to get out of here because, if I hang out with Seibo, it's going to be a 5-hour affair. But then I thought about it and he said, podcast, what are we going to talk about? I said, what if my voice could be heard exponentially over and over again and that person would share it with someone else? Could that impact someone's life? Could that be life-giving? Could that have breakthrough in someone life? And so that's the way I kind of think.
Or would a hot girl see it and
absolutely?
Oh my god, I love his brown skin. Just
look
never
at this.
Change.
Ooh.
Never change.
Milk chocolate.
He is
Yeah,
a fountain of youth. This guy
Milk chocolate.
He probably doesn't want to say his age, but he's. You probably couldn't guess his age, actually.
So yeah, I hope I answered that question. It's just we evolve every single day, and you said to me in the car, it's like, how are you doing? I go, man, I'm doing great. I'm alive today. and Seibo said, so is that your barometer? I don't know exactly what he said. Greatness, or is that is that your flat line? Whatever it is. And I just said, Seibo, I got to tell you, when you're given life every day, right? You don't know how great it's going to be because. All of us here collectively now, we're touching people's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're either blessing people or doing something different. And so I believe we're called to be here on earth to exponentially bless people, to give life, give knowledge, right? Give a perspective so that other people can become better, allow them to overcome.
Right.
We're knowledge givers, right? We are. I mean, you're a father, you're an educator, right? You're an entrepreneur.
Right.
You're a teacher. You're an instructor.
That's
you're
true.
a life giver. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for, and we're here for such a short time.
Oh man, I did not realize how quickly a year goes as I got into my late 20s, and I was like, pfft. And when I hit there, I was like, dude, the year's gone already. And people's like, it goes fast. I was like, and it has been exponentially getting fast. I'm like, man, I gotta just do things without second guessing myself too much.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to live in your head too long. And, I said, like, I've never been depressed. And, maybe I have because, as I think back, there's, times when, like, I smoked weed and did nothing. There's probably a good reason, like, why I was smoking weed and doing nothing so often. And, as you were saying, what I think might be, like, one of the best ways to deal with depression, and not just depression, but the right way to live life, is to have a purpose-driven life, right? Like, whatever that purpose is. Helping people get stronger and then having more confidence, Or at one point we were selling software so that, I guess, companies can make more money.
We can make more money.
Yeah. Well, there's a purpose in that, too.
There is.
Well, it depends on your approach,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you just take it as something that's, not that important and you're just going to skate by, then that's not really purpose driven. But if you're doing it to learn skills, and I think if you have a purpose and you're not kind of aimlessly just breathing, eating, and shitting, then I think that's a great way to avoid depression.
So I want to go touch on two things that you guys said. You said relational equity, and then I want to link that to depression because and the word skill. Building relationships, that is a skill that is not taught to everybody. Or it's not, the importance is not good grades, follow the rules, fuck all that nonsense. Because it's who you know and how you got to know them. Not even just who you know. I think people take that to this weird nth dark level where it's just, I'm going to associate with these people. I'm not going to actually build a relationship with them. Building a relationship means stating your needs, being vulnerable, and having a discussion. And
vulnerable,
then
that's a big word, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean?
Especially for us Asians.
But I think that's what sucks people into these weird depression places is they don't have the skill or know that it's important to make relationships.
Yeah.
That they hang out with the same friends who are going to give them the same perspective all the time from high school. Nothing wrong with that, but if you're never going to have that vacuum where you have to go make relationships and learn the skill and practice, and that runs into our culture's perfectionism.
Yeah.
A lot of cultures want you to do it perfectly. Don't fuck up. But the reality is you have to fuck up a bunch.
Yeah.
A bunch. So that's what I'm saying is I'm trying to get at the reason people avoid failure, that's what gets us into depression, I think, in a roundabout way.
Or when they fail, right? There's no one to walk alongside of them. I never really
mentor them, right?
Yeah, I never really believe on a hand down, but it's like a hand up, right? Someone to walk alongside with you, right? Literally, and just say, hey, you made a mistake. We all make mistakes. It's okay. Just pick up the rusty dusty, keep moving on, because that's part of life. If you're not making mistakes, you're not alive, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to make mistakes. And I think that in our Asian culture, and I think I see this a lot with Asian males, especially those that are a little bit older, and it's a form of major depression that no one talks about. It's this whole notion of failing and not allowing people in, right? So if someone gets fired, it's shameful.
Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody. Shh, dirty word. But if you say, look, it happened, it didn't work out, let's move on. Instead of dealing with it head on, it's just this whole hiding, right?
Under the rug.
Under the rug, no vulnerability. And vulnerability is a deep thing. It's just, I know that Filipinos have more of a Spanish influence, so sometimes they're a little bit more open, but for the most part, I think the thing that links us as Asian men, Asian cultures, is this whole notion of kind of being introverted with our needs, our wants, our vulnerabilities, our shame. And it stops right here, right now. I mean, you're a dad, you're a husband. Are you married, Brandon?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Single as they come.
Okay, but you'll be married one day, probably, right? High probability. Who knows? You're going to be in a place where your mentoring and teaching is going to go to the nth level, right? Because then you're responsible for other people's lives and their emotional needs, right? Beyond financial. And what are you going to carry on to the next couple of generations? So what he's teaching his daughters now are going to go beyond them. They're going to go 2 to 3 generations, right? Because sooner or later, he'll be a grandfather, right? It goes really quick. And so here you are. He's already affecting 2 or 3 generations. And so it's important that we speak about it now, but we speak about it often. So it's repeatable. So it becomes easier over time.
Like when you got whiff of stuff Angela was saying, even if they don't have an experience to register it against, it's like, well, I heard my dad say, and then, they'll have that experience, I mean, I think sometimes also traumatic things are meant to cocoon inside of us until later, we're not supposed to solve everything right now. We need a certain level of maturity to come back and be like, oh, I was not ready to handle that at that time. Children have these trauma experiences that you're like, man, that is some fucked up stuff. But then they come later to overcome it, or they address it, but at the right time.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with, I guess, smoking weed and doing something. It's coping. But sometimes if we have to know what we're coping from, and that's where I went wrong. I didn't even know what I was coping from or medicating
Correct, exactly. That's a good point. And I think, by talking about these things, it allows you to go to a place of the vulnerability that I don't think if you allow yourself to go there, then you can't contextualize the inverse of that feeling, which could be, I don't know, like ecstasy or just extreme happiness, right? Because if you're always trying to mitigate like those negative feelings, then contextualizing like happiness versus what your low is, there's not as much of a differential.
Yeah.
And I think, that guy Jordan Peterson was this clinical psychologist was talking about how to live like a complete life, you do have to explore like your dark side and know that you're capable of all those things, and that those things are all within us, and that to actually be noble is to know that you're capable of those things and to choose to not do them versus just being like a naive person that's like, all right, I'll do good because we do good stuff.
Yeah.
I think a good example would be like if a person who is a farmer, they had to kill animals for a living, and then they chose to be vegan because they've seen the way that they had to treat animals, versus someone just like, I read on the internet being vegan's cool. Okay, why are you vegan? I don't know, because it's cool, and I want to tell everyone I'm vegan. That's a very different reason to just do something versus having a like harrowing experience where you're like, oh my God, I've seen this, and I'm going to choose something differently.
This is so perfect. Why did you choose to be vegan?
I'm vegan.
You just mentioned that with the smoothie.
Is it to be cool?
No.
We're going to grill you. You want to be cool now?
Yeah. Time to ask
Peer pressure.
some tough questions. Yeah.
Vegan. Yeah, it was by choice. He knows this. I almost I died 3 times 18 months ago.
Whoa.
I had an aortic, dissection. So basically, my aorta ripped. Right, it's kind of exploded.
Whoa.
And so I had 4% chance of living. And 11 and a half hours surgery. Repaired me with just really cool dude. Neil Carbonero, shout out to you. You saved my life.
Good job, man, Neil.
Yeah, go Neil. You see San Francisco?
Aorta ruptures. Go see Neil.
You'll have no choice.
Limited time offer.
Yeah. So as I kind of healed up, I started learning a whole lot about inputting into your body, right? And not just TV content, not just books, etc., but also food. So all of us have a need for water, number one. And by the way, cheers! Thank you so much for Hitchechi water. My gosh, this is the best water in the world. Not my opinion only.
This is the company.
Not my opinion only, but that's what the water standards in the United States tell us. It's one of the best. So we actually have input into our bodies, and so I chose vegan very specifically because I wanted to control sodium intake and chemicals, and by going the way of the plant, I could eat like a moose and not have to worry about it. I eat like a moose. But I don't have this sexy metabolism, this pole dancer.
I guess you gotta take up pole dancing.
I know pole dancing,
I know how to. I mean, I'm naturally not on a stripper pole, but when I was little, I figured out how to do all these, like, I would watch acrobats on TV. I'm like, oh, okay, you could kind of like...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so...
Vulnerability.
I'll just add some body rolls into that and pole dancing.
See, it's the can-do attitude.
See what comes out? Like, I never knew that. Now I joke about it coming out.
Well, every time I take my kid to the park, I always have to show some pole skills.
Oh, dude, you gotta let
like
people
the
know who's boss of
sideways
the area.
Oh, man.
How's he hanging sideways?
Have you seen his crazy flips?
Oh, yeah.
That's a long time ago.
No, it may be a long time ago. He could still do some of it. It's so crazy because years ago, right, we were all super, super poor, right? We're working at this startup, and I said, hey, Seibo, I can't really afford this gym membership that I have, but I'm going to suspend it. But he was like, oh, workout? He goes, I teach at Pacific Athletic Club. I can get you in there. I go, how? I go, that's expensive, right? And back then, like, $80 a month was very expensive for a gym. Super expensive.
I think it was like $200 a month.
Or some crazy.
Pacific Athletic Club is now the one off of, I think it's off of Holly. I don't know what it's called now. It's something else.
It's a Bay Club now.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Bay Club, yeah.
So he goes, I teach capoeira. I go, really? So I go, could you just get me in the gym? He goes, yeah, just come with me. And he's like, watch my class if you want to. So I was watching this class, and the way he was moving, I go, this guy's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I saw his compilation video.
Yeah. And then so there were a couple of girls, it was mostly guys, and I would tell the girls, I go, he's my friend. He's my friend.
Did it help?
No, because they go, do you do capoeira? I go, no, I work out the weights.
Damn it. I always wish some of these could benefit They definitely didn't benefit me.
They benefited you.
Well, maybe. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, it got us in the gym.
But see, you always played this, like, hey, I'm a safe guy, I'm, like, funny, I'm witty. Dude, you could have banged so many chicks, but you didn't even realize it. But see, if you had
tell my
me,
wife that. See, I told you, wife, I could have. I just didn't.
if you had me with you, dude, I would have been, like, a really good wingman, because I would have said, okay, you take half, I take half.
Yeah.
You know? Or what's yours is
Divide
mine.
and conquer,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I met my wife, you know, so...
Yeah, you barely met your wife, because that was kind of still kind of, do I continue to date her status back then? But that was a long time ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you see this, that was a long time ago.
I did all right.
Yeah.
He's making it sound like it was like nothing. There was, you know...
You had game, but you didn't know you had game.
Yeah, I probably didn't know the ones that were like feeling it, except for the ones that were like really explicitly like touching my hand. I was like, all right, I'll go in for the kill now. Yeah.
Yeah, because he was just so like, he was everybody's friend. He was like kind of a comedian. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know how much power you have, you know?
Well, that is an interesting topic. I mean, and that is something that as I got older and I think had more self-awareness of myself without the filter of thinking like I should be anything, then I could like more clearly see like, oh, like I do have power, you know? And then ultimately now, you know, I run my own company, which is cool.
Yeah. Hashtag badass.
Thank you. Man, we should have him on the show all the time.
I'm this guy's biggest fan. Let me tell you.
Really?
As a person, as a friend, it's also as a professional, because I've seen every single stage, like literally, over now. Literally, it's 13 years.
Yeah. It is weird because, I mean, it's cool to hear, and it also gives me like, you know, I'm proud of that for sure. But as I'm navigating it, it just feels like, you know, you're ice skating without really knowing how to ice skate. You know, it's just like, shit, I think this is working well. And my philosophy has always been like, as long as you tell the truth, then like,
but that's part of personal power too, is admitting we don't know what the fuck is really going on, but only people around us can witness. We're like, you know, when you watch someone do something really well and they don't even know they're doing it well, they're just like, I don't know, I'm just doing me. I think that's what happens for people's depression, is when they try to play these roles when they don't want to.
Yeah.
And they know they want to drop them, but they feel like if they do, people are going to be disappointed, or people are going to not. I think most people are afraid of not being able to survive without people's validation. Because we are validation creatures, but we need it from people who are not, like, who are giving it to us in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I told the story when Seibo and I both got interviewed, that my relatives would take me through Chinatown and downtown and scare the shit out of me by showing me...
San Francisco?
Yeah, by showing, like, pointing at the homeless people and like, do you want to be like them? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you better do well. And I'm like,
your parents did that to you too?
see? And then it turns out that that's like, it's this sneaky thing where you're like, okay, scare the shit out of your children.
Yeah.
And then they're never going to take risks. But I need you to get the fuck out of the house at the right time.
Yeah.
And so it's this really bipolar thing where they're like, oh my, and so let me backtrack. I talked with a friend who has who knows a therapist in Berkeley who works specifically with Cal Berkeley students, especially Asian males.
Oh boy.
And it turns out that they have lack of preparation for flying out of the nest, and that is why they're depressed.
Yeah.
They don't have the skills to go off on their own, make a new community, make skills for themselves, and they're just depressed because they're afraid to like step out of that, get good grades. Like they have no idea what they actually want.
Then that spirals into the lack of relational equity within the opposite sex, other males of different colors,
Yeah.
right? And then that goes to that whole notion is like, oh, I'm less capable. I do have that small penis syndrome, right?
Exactly.
So
And it confirms it.
it confirms it. Or, it confirms it wrongly, right?
Yes.
It's a bad validation.
Yes.
Then it becomes a
How could
spiral.
it be confirmed rightly?
Well, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm a shower, not a crower.
All of them are wrong.
Yeah, not a
It's
shower.
wrong, right? It's wrong.
It's wrong
So,
on every
thank
level. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just thinking wrongfully, but what about rightfully? Wait, there is no right way to say you
No.
got the smallest dick in the room. It's all bad. Okay, sorry. Go back to what you were saying.
I really affirm what Brendan's saying. It hits home, especially when you're going around Chinatown. Well, my dad and I used to take us on the 14 mission, and we would cross 6th Street. Right, that's kind of crack alley. Say, if you don't get a job, you don't get a good education, that's what's going to happen. You are going to be homeless. You're going to be a bum, and the fear. It's like never. I don't want that. Right. And truthfully, right, we did well at school. We're doing well professionally, partly because of that fear of failure.
Right, that don't fall off the bat. That is not a good place, because once that's gone and you're no longer being supervised, then what? You know what I mean? Like when there's not it's just like that's not a fun place to live in fear of something. Because aspiration is a much more long-term solution. Like when you're aspiring to something, it takes you through the hard spots.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to get across by having these conversations, is that you're not alone. It's possible. There are ways. And to hear this may be the first time for some people to hear what's going on. Like another person confirms, like, oh my God, my parents and family used to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people who wouldn't think that's a good idea. When you're raising kids and you're not given a manual, they're just like, okay, scare the shit out of them.
Yeah.
That'll keep them in line. But up to what point?
Right.
Yeah.
And especially if it's generational, right? So for us, I mean, we're a lot more enlightened because we're speaking about it, and we happen to be like different groups of men, right, with 3 different influences. I mean, we're very fortunate, but there are groups of people, especially in our Asian culture, that what I call it's called backtracking, right? Instead of advancing, they retreat back, right? And then use fear, not to validate, but actually hold them back instead of propelling for growth. So you talked about purpose-driven life, right? We all have a purpose, all of us collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we'll fail, but we have to then steer the ship just a little bit, right? There's this analogy I always use with people I walk with and mentor. So when Christopher Columbus was navigating, if he was off by just one little, like one longitude, like one itsy bitsy bit, he would have gone down to the South Pole, quite possibly, right? So could you
Called it
imagine
India too.
Yeah. Could you imagine in life here, we're given so many different chances, but what if we make those mistakes, let's say by even a foot, but we have someone to walk us by the hand, say, okay, you made that mistake, let's go ahead and keep moving forward. And that's what we need, right? I think the way you battle, back to the topic at hand, depression, yes, there's maybe psychotropic drugs, right? But in the practical, I think people are needed. People that are depressed are typically isolated, right?
Yeah.
Move away from isolation. How we do that? Many different forms, but one of which is conversations, bring it into the light, and helping propel people away from shame, away from historical pain, and literally educating them that there's a different way of living life, given that you're given a brand new day.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult, but what's more difficult if you don't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think, you were talking about certain mistakes, and what I've come to realize is that mistakes are actually like the best teachers, right? If you kind of objectively look at the mistakes in your life and saw how you learned from them, you'd be like, well, a lot of the mistakes are what ended up shaping me. which is why when like people get fired and they're given some bullshit reason as to why they were fired, I'm like, what a missed opportunity to tell this guy like what he needs to work on, you know? You know who I'm talking about. Anyways, what was my point? Oh yeah, so these mistakes, and I think that if we go back to like people that are depressed and what Asian males think is the Asian male archetype, if they, well, it goes back to like not wanting to talk about things. So if they're starting to feel like they're failing at something and then they're feeling like to not communicate these feelings to other people, and then it just spirals worse and worse. And you know, you were talking about like if someone makes a mistake and they have a mentor to describe to them like how, you know, to look at this properly and to look at it as some sort of benefit, is I believe if you just give someone that framework of like, look, when you make a mistake, you just go back and try to objectively see like what you could have done wrong and just not do that again and look at that as a lesson. And I think a good analogy would be like when you play video games, like you like to play video games where you don't just pass every single level on the first try. You always like to die a few times and then eventually pass it. And then
fourth level boss, you get stuck there for like a couple days.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, making mistakes is actually just like overcoming that challenge on that level. And then once you finish it, you feel good about finishing that level. And then you get to like, you know, literally and figuratively level up.
Yeah. Good topics, guys.
Well, thank you.
Is this a Friday wrap?
I think we still got 5 minutes. So
5 minutes?
So 5 more minutes. We typically, okay, so how we end this, and I like how you're wrapping it up. See, this is
he's a pro. He's actually the producer of this show.
He's a very assertive male. He's like, you know what? I think it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'll just mention it.
He's hungry, dude.
You see that?
He's showing what he preaches, and this is another thing. It's like if there's something on your mind, just speak up, say it. Don't internalize it. You know, like if people don't like it, well, you know, that's just life, you know. So, okay, back to my point is we all give one little tip at the end. So, do you have a tip for something like really tactical, something that someone can do today to feel better, or to, you know, if they're feeling depressed, what would you like to tell them to help them with that?
Yeah. So something very tactical, something doable and practical daily for everyone that's listening in today is this. Life is short. It's 1 second at a time, literally one breath at a time, right? You can't tackle an entire football field. I'm going to use a football analogy. What you need to do is put on your spikes, put on the socks, put on the helmet first, and be encouraged that you're not alone, right? You are not alone in this. There's always going to be people, much like these gentlemen, people around you that's going to be giving you a hand up versus a hand down. And be cautious in terms of advice. People that lift you up and propel you are the people that are going to help you. The people that put you down, shame you, are the people that are going to imprison you. So be enlightened by the fact that if you believe in God, if there's a higher spirit, go to that one breath at a time, one day at a time.
Amen. And you know I'm not a Christian, but I'll say amen to that.
Hey, I love life, man. And I love these guys.
I fundamentally believe we all believe in the same God. We just call them whatever we want to call them. So, Brandon, what about you?
A tactical thing that I think you can do today is to watch Brene Brown's TED Talk on shame. It's about 15 minutes, and it explicitly goes into how empathy is a skill, and that's the antidote to it. You have somebody listen with empathy, which is going to be a good person for you, or if you don't, you can write it down, journal it. But learn what it is so that you can identify it in yourself, so that you know what the response feels like when you are having a shame reaction, because that's going to stop you from moving forward, and I want you to move forward. So learn what it is.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Good stuff. So I think my tip is, and it goes back to a play off of what you two said, as far as the attitude goes, you know, like find the people that when you spend time with them, you know, you feel good, and hang out with more people like that. And the people that make you feel bad, you have to spend less time with them. I always think about, people always talk about like family or having like really long friendships with people that I always see that are really toxic, and that, you know, there's that term misery loves company. And I know that being around other inspirational, nice, awesome people like makes me feel more that way too. So, you know, find out what you like. You could always go online and find other groups, you know, like through meetup.com that have similar interests. And I guarantee if you start finding more people that share similar interests and you feel more integrated and feeling like, you know, that you have that sense of belonging, then I think that's a great way to build that community and be connected and not have to feel isolated and have that isolation lead to some form of depression.
Man, good word, man.
Thank you.
All
You.
right.
I was thinking about that while you guys were talking, so I needed some time.
Man, Romigos, good job, guys.
Thank you.
Friday. Yo.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Next week we'll have some other cool little topic. Brandon, where do they find you usually?
Oh, at brandonchin.net. That's BRANDONCHIEN.net.
And you know us, vapexhale.com. Happy Asian Males will get you 20% off your order, so you could always use that. And Al,
What?
do you want to say anything on your way out?
Love and life, man. Love you guys. Peace out.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone. That doesn't even make sense.
Thanks,
Al.
for everyone. Thanks for Al. This is a fun episode, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Dude. Thanks for doing it.
Dude, that was fun.
You're a pro.
I really enjoyed
start
it.
your own.
I'll be right back.
That's the best part. Anyone could start their own.
So, you're going to post it, right?
Yeah, I edit it and then...
Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll post it too, and I'll share it. I'll tweet it out, and then I'll put it on Insta.
Thank you.
Dude, good stuff, man. See? Serendipitous. Bam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love it.
So what are you and Laura going to do for Memorial Day?
So tonight we're going to take Caitlin out to dinner. So we've been mentoring her for 7 years.
So, is she in Europe now? Or?
No. She just travels a lot. So
Okay.
So she does well. Like, you know, I help negotiate like a 6-figure salary for her.
Nice.
You know,
Good for her.
She works at Devo. You know, the video thing.
Yeah.
And
music video thing.
Music video, yeah. And you know, so she has a master's degree in archaeology, but for business. So she does a lot of research. So that gal babysits on weekends, and that's my wife handles her money. So gives her a budget and tells her what she can and cannot spend, 'cause she has to pay back loans.
Caitlin?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the part where she still needs to work on budgeting.
Yeah, so she's working on that, right? She has to pay like whatever, $100,000 in school loans, and so we're gonna have dinner with her at Greens. It's the best vegetarian restaurant in the city.
No, I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's in Fort Mason. Then Laura and I are gonna go to the Giants game tomorrow.
Is that Francisco Sanchez's restaurant, Greens?
No, he doesn't have a restaurant anymore.
How come you closed Tasties or?
Oh yeah, it's hard to maintain a restaurant.
Really? Every time I drove by, it was hella busy.
Well, but if you notice, their spacing wasn't there was too much space between tables.
Okay.
So you need more people, and he treated it kind of like everyone was his best friend. Or no, they're your customers, so that you need them to churn.
Yeah,
You need to churn, right?
I know that problem.